Lelina Meke Aloha, I'm Joshua Cooper. Welcome to Aloha, Sustainability in Hawaii, and Peace in our Pacific, the UN SDGs movement in Moana Nui Akea. Today we'll be looking at women's rights or human rights in Hawaii, SDG 5, gender equality and justice for all. Aloha and welcome back. Today we're joined by 4 amazing wahine working for women's rights around the world. Thank you all for joining us.
Nice to be here, Jeff.
Thank you for having us.
Today we're looking at SDG number 5, and SDG number 5 ensures gender equality and empowerment of women and girls. Global Goal 5 demands half the population receives a chance to live life at its fullest. Gender justice also guarantees political, economic, social, and cultural equality and equity for all. Could you share with us a bit, beginning with you, Ki'i, what's the role and also the amount of respect that women received in traditional society, and where are we headed today in our world?
Historically, we had a very special place, and we were very much acknowledged for who we are in a matriarchal society, which was Hawai'i. At this point, we're no longer under that matriarch. Our queen was imprisoned, and we have become the 50th state of the United States. And with that aspect of assimilation and oppression, the women have also been subjected to so many countless injustices along the way. Yeah, and it's still happening. That's why we're here today.
Thank you so much. Ezinne, could you give us some insights about the respect for women? Mahalo.
Yes, along with what Ki'i was just saying, women for so many communities or cultures have a very sacred role. And part of that sacred role included lifting and supporting each other and being present when a woman would birth her baby, or when a woman would be, even from youth, going into her menstrual cycle. So many different important circumstances that occur in the life cycle of a woman, we were always and have always been there to lift, to nurture, to heal, using the wisdom of the ancient women, the wise women from our cultures. I'm originally from Nigeria, and many of the things that I learned as well were passed on to me from my ancestors and from my mother and from the women that were part of my youth, my upbringing. And a lot of what we did was continuing to bring, reinforce our role as women and make sure that that wisdom wasn't gone or wasn't taken away or wasn't lost. So we are also really important at keeping the knowledge and keeping the sacred wisdom within our communities and within our cultures.
Thank you so much for sharing. It really is from womb to tomb, but also respect, knowing that women really create life and how much we've lost as we focus on other aspects, instead looking at profit instead of people. Kristie, could you share a bit?
Yes, just in my own personal experience, I guess because the forced assimilation has been going on for so long in our islands, it's very difficult to be able to share very basic human rights with those in power, for them to understand it in a way that it actually can get into their understanding of what they are either taking away or stopping Indigenous and traditional cultures to having access to.
Really good points and really reinforce bringing everything together. Nicolle, you are in Hawaii now, coming in and working with bringing that global Indigenous perspective. Could you add some?
Yeah, absolutely. Indigenous women across the globe are the caretakers of their community through language, through songs, through ceremony, especially through our bodies and through this reclamation of birth, pregnancy, and motherhood that's basically happening across the globe. And that is kind of our fight right now, is to reclaim birth and motherhood and in our own rematriation process by reclaiming our history and communities that we come from. And so absolutely, because of colonization, women were in a place of becoming property, not only in the United States, but globally. And so there's definitely a need to reclaim our power in our community through rematriation process, as well as like addressing the patriarchy and our colonistic systems, specifically our legal systems, that we're actually in the fight right now against that.
I understand. And when we look at Global Goal 5, it really focuses on ending all forms of discrimination against all women and girls everywhere. And as you've highlighted, Indigenous women do face that double discrimination, yet remain dedicated to self-determination in all its forms for fundamental freedoms. One important aspect that I noticed is that doing research on Sustainable Development Goal number 5, there's a target 5.6, and it actually ensures universal access to reproductive health and rights as enshrined in the Program of Action of the International Conference on Population and Development, and also the Beijing Platform for Action. So 2 global conferences all raised this issue of Target 5, universal access to reproductive health and rights. And what's also important is we're now beginning the UN Commission on the Status of Women is just starting this week in New York, and International Women's Day. Can you share what's the situation here in Hawaii regarding access to reproductive health and rights and what we should be focusing on today? Ki'i.
So here today, we've been fighting for about 13 years against midwifery legislation in our state. I've been a part of that from the beginning. It started off that I was actually interested in protecting those who had taken me under their wing and helped me learn. And, with the law that was proposed, they would too, after 30, 40 years, a practice be illegal. All but one of them has passed away at this point. So today I stand for myself and all of my colleagues and all of my daughters and my sons and the future. We have HB 955, which was a bill that we introduced this session. It was gaining huge momentum and had an amazing level of support from not just, in the hearings passing unanimously, but also we had resolutions from Hawaii Island, their county council, as well as Maui County Council. And immense support from other organizations, even globally. And for some reason, after passing 2 hearings, it was hung up in the Finance Committee with Kyle Yamashita, who is a Maui representative for many, many years. And he is the chair of the Finance Committee. And we contacted him for weeks prior to it advancing to the Finance Committee, thousands of emails, calls, like all day, all night long, and we actually showed up, 3 of us, as constituents of his district. I also sit on Pacific Birth Collective as one of the nonprofits that I'm a part of, which is based out of this district. And 90% of the folks that are a part of our organization are from that district. So, sharing with him our concerns, we showed up with the intention of meeting with him for even 1 to 2 minutes. He would not even acknowledge us, let alone speak to us. We sat after hours, when they said, okay, the 3 of you can stay in the office and wait. And so we thought, okay, well, if we sit here long enough, he's going to come out and give us the time of day. But he didn't. And so at this point, the bill is dead officially, but it can still be saved. At this point, we have a couple of days officially where it can actually come back to life. And that is what our fight is about currently. We are really, really pleading with Psyche, who is the Speaker of the House, to please take action. We have been contacting him, emailing him, calling, sitting in and whatnot with him as well, and to no avail. Nadine Nakamura is amazing, and because of Ellie Cochran, who is also another Maui rep, who saw this injustice that occurred at the Capitol with just being completely ignored by many, not just constituents. She was willing to speak to us when Ellie contacted her, Nadine, and so we got to sit with Nadine Nakamura, and I'm very grateful to her for at least having the decency to let us be heard. Not quite sure where things will go from this point, but I do appreciate her willingness to help. And yeah, so we have an event today. We're going to be at the Capitol from here until Thursday, honestly. Our main event today is happening from 12 to 5. So if you're around, please come around and check us out.
Thank you so much to share with us how you're really focusing and sharing as well about the Sleep In for Social Justice. Ezinne, can you share a bit about why this legislation is so important for women here in Hawaii?
Well, basically, one of the things that has been very clear throughout the past week is that we have career politicians making decisions about women's bodies and their right to choose without actually being in touch with the women and the communities that are clearly stating over and over again, we want to protect our ability to choose our birth providers. And what we are seeing over and over again is, despite the outcry from the families in our communities, both male and females, and even some of the youth like Sovereign, Kristie's daughter, she wants to be a part of this work as well. And our voices have been coming across every year after year, getting the highest amount of positive testimonies in support of our bill, like 1,300 pages, support from our state task force, support from NARM, which is the credentialing body for CPMs. We've got so much positive support, and yet our career politicians are literally turning their backs to the communities, turning their backs. And so if you've got people that are turning their backs, they don't care what's happening to the women in this community. They don't care that if their midwife is then criminalized, that they will have to do things on their own and may have bigger issues in their birth experiences. They don't care that they're forcing women to have to go to the hospital and consent, or not even consent, but have their hands or their bodies be touched by hands that don't care about them, that can traumatize them, that can rape them, that can cause lifelong trauma for themselves and for their children. And so it matters to the women here because they are taking away our choice to be able to select who we feel safe with, who we feel confident with, who we want to be at our birth. And so that's our biggest issue, is that this is a reproductive choice conversation. Many of these politicians have signed on and publicly stated that they will stand for women's reproductive rights. This is a part of reproductive rights as well. And you cannot just focus on one aspect of reproductive rights and turn your back on the other end.
Mahalo. Thank you so much. And that also reinforces the decision of the UN Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination that met in August, where we did take the voice of Indigenous women from Hawaii to the UN. And of the recommendations, 2 of the 3 deal entirely with what you just shared with us in such an eloquent way. 1, Indigenous people's rights, but 2, reproductive rights. Kristie, can you share a bit with us as well and your insights on this valuable issue?
Yes, going off of kind of what you just shared, the task force report, which was submitted within the United Nations and acknowledged. If we go back in history, 4 years ago, I was sitting in a rep's office and she told me, we're going to start a task force. We're going to have legislation go through. We have the next 3 years to do it. Act 32, which was the licensing law, stated over the next 3 years, we will incorporate all birth practitioners. So HB 955, which is being told that it is dead, was not a new idea. It was closure to the first law that was enacted in 2019, because that one was not complete. The Sunrise report, the auditor stated, you should be licensing all your midwives, and you should not use a national private organization to license them, because if you do, you will unfairly and unnecessarily create a competitive advantage. And so this is a problem. And here we are 4 years later. Every year we've had a bill. Every year it has died. This is the first year it passed both subject committees, health and consumer protection, unanimously. And yet it hit finance as a non-fiscal bill. and it was not heard. And now we're being told it's dead. And Rep Psyche has the power to re-refer it and put it to a House floor vote. And why do we want that? Because we want to see who supports reproductive rights. And Rep Psyche signed the document that said he pledged to carry on the legacy of women's rights.
Mahalo, Kristie. Thank you so much. And that also gets into the reproductive rights issue. And I was just at the Amnesty International annual general membership meeting, and they had a huge panel on reproductive rights featuring women from around the country and around the world. And Nicolle, you can share that perspective as well as how is this entirely wrapped around right to choose, reproductive rights, as well as Indigenous women's right of self-determination.
Absolutely. Having been with you in Geneva, advocating for maternal reproductive rights for all people, all women and children and BIPOC folks, what I'm seeing is on the federal level, there's lots of recommendations being made on improving maternal health outcomes in all of our communities, but there's not a lot of input being taken from grassroots organizations or even those on the ground who are filling in the gaps right now. I was just looking up some March of Dimes information for Hawaii, and like 21.4% of women are receiving care in the 5th month of pregnancy, which means they're in adequate prenatal care, meaning less than 5 prenatal visits prior to birth. I visited Maui actually earlier in the fall, and hearing some of the invisible policies in place around the decision-making for hospitals and OB doctors, basically telling families that if they birth out of hospital, they will not receive care at that hospital. Knowing that there's 2 insurance carriers that provide maternal health services to families in these communities. One of them also will drop families from their insurance if they express that they're going to have an out-of-hospital birth. And so what I'm seeing is these policies that are being implemented on a federal level, these recommendations are not being implemented. And it's stuff like this that keeps them from actually being implemented in the community. We can talk about improving Medicare access expansion. We can talk about doula support, because obviously they're also part of this picture. But, you know, providing and working with home birth, out-of-hospital birth, community health workers, Indigenous midwives, traditional midwives, like that is an avenue that people are not working towards and together in a way that we should. And honestly, when I see recommendations from like ACNM and ACOG, I'm not seeing any like groundwork happening. Like these are great statements to happen, but like we need you now. Like where are they? We need them now to stand with us to get this bill through.
Oh, those are excellent points. And what it really does is highlight how human rights are all interconnected. The right to health, ending discrimination against women, equity and justice for all. And when you look at Target 5.9, it really calls for the adoption and strengthening of policies and enforceable legislation for gender equality. So really, if HB 955 is not passed, traditional midwives of Hawaii will be criminalized, and women will be told by the government after July 1 who and how people can touch their body. Women will lose access to culture appropriate care in rural areas as well across Hawaii, will no longer have access. So what you're sharing and why you're doing this really does bring forward the interconnectedness, but more importantly, the importance of how we should all organize together in solidarity going forward. As we look at what needs to happen, what are the next steps? Looking at the future of women's rights around the world, where should we aspire to? And what can we do to improve women's rights today, Ki'in?
Honor and support reproductive justice and our ability to choose what we see fit for our bodies, our babies, and our families globally. You know, it is across the board. It's not just a Hawaii issue. And that's why for myself, all these years, it's been so important for me to not just fight for Hawaiian rights, but for everyone here in Hawaii. Hawaii is very much a melting pot of cultures. And, you know, I can't see my other sisters go down just because, you know, I might be able to be covered ultimately with an exemption that's not actually available for me currently through Papa'olokahi, even though it's supposed to be. But what about my sisters? You know, we need to look out for each other. This is not just about me. This is about all of us. And we need to care for each other as sisters. We need to recognize and honor each other as sisters, not throw each other under the bus. And, you know, it's just heartbreaking.
but I know we're all in this campaign together, and we'll organize and continue to coordinate and use and utilize networks around the world to ensure gender justice for all. And Ezinne, can you share a bit about how you see today, but more importantly, the future of women's rights as well?
What I think would be a beautiful outcome from all of this is, rather than actively trying to criminalize and reduce the amount of support that women are asking for, improve the transports, improve the training for transporting to the hospital. That means we're improving our EMS training. We're improving communications between those who are providing the home birth services and our OBs, because there is a place for a hospital birth, but you're not going to see us at all if the birth went successfully within the home. But there are those times when we do need to go to the hospital. And what happens then is when it becomes critical. And the communication is what needs to be improved, not the decreasing of midwives, not any of that. What needs to happen is the improvement of the transports to the hospital. The midwives have valuable information and wisdom about the person they support, about that family. They know them intimately, and that individual feels that comfort because of that midwife. And they're not going to feel that as they go to the hospital. There's so much negativity if a woman needs that care in the hospital, and that's her right. If she needs to go to the hospital, that is her right. Do not discriminate or look down upon somebody who's walking to the hospital and needs additional support. And so my take is, don't eliminate, create the space. Those spaces are there. We need to be working together, but stop looking to lining your pockets. This is not a financial thing. This is about supporting women as they choose to birth, wherever they choose to birth, however they choose to birth, and with whomever they choose to birth.
Those are excellent points. In a way, it's a decolonization of healthcare, but also a decommodification as well. Kristie, love to hear your perspective as well.
Yeah, I think it breaks my heart to think that my children would grow up and not have the choice. I think this is about the kids. This is about them right now being able to choose and know that there's other options, and they will not know if this does not go through.
Yeah, I think people also need to understand that regulation doesn't equal safety. Regulation actually can create more healthcare deserts, which the United States is dealing with right now. There needs to be a promotion and increased visibility of expertise for traditionally and Indigenous trained midwives across the globe, as well as increased opportunities for partnerships and funding for education. We want skilled midwives. That's what it is. Skills do not equal regulation either. And so increasing and supporting and creating policies with the community, with the people in our communities is actually needed. And it needs to be reflective of the communities that we're serving. Right now, the policies that are in place are very restrictive. They're based on colonistic perspectives, and they're generally by people like men who don't even get to have babies. And so we should be able to make our own policies and guidelines and our own accountability, which is another part of why people want legislation in place for regulation. We can be accountable. Our communities keep us accountable, but they don't trust that. But our communities have been enforcing accountability for our traditional knowledge for millennia. And that is even more powerful than any judicial system that's going to try and keep us from providing this care to our communities.
Mahalo for that historical, as well as most importantly, holistic perspective of really how we all entered this world. It seems like such an amazing thing that male, female, everyone there in the legislature making decisions about this important issue. That's how we all came here. And to not respect that and have that understanding of human rights, this is the most fundamental issue of almost anything we'll look at. So I understand we need to contact Representative Saiki, calling for a floor vote on the law protecting traditional and Kanaka Maoli midwifery practices from criminality, as well as cultural erasure. And as we look going forward, gender justice really does aim to eradicate prejudice and work for equal rights and respect for all. Global Goal 5 calls for the promotion of gender equality and equity. And at its heart, SDG 5 provides the basis for better life for women and girls and everyone. It also opens a world of opportunities for all to organize for a strong social fabric that values everyone here. So in closing, maybe just a couple words of wisdom of where we need to go. And we thank you all for joining. Ki'i, your final thoughts.
Thank you so much for having us. I just really appreciate the opportunity. Please contact Psyche, email, call, let's make it happen. We can do this together.
Mahalo. Ezinne, your final words of wisdom, and I've appreciated this conversation so deeply.
Also, thank you for this forum, this platform. We need to protect our sacred amniotic waters as much as we need to protect all. This is about life, and we need to protect all life. And so my final thoughts are just take a stand today, stand with Hawaii, stand with Sovereign, and stand with us as we ask to be seen and to be heard and to be acknowledged and to be answered.
Even bringing in the water is life. Excellent. So beautiful. Kristie.
Yes, hi. One of our oldest traditional midwives who did pass recently, just want to bring her up. A few years ago, she stood in front of the legislature and she looked at all the women voting against her and she said, "I burned my bras for you." And so let us not forget, women of the legislature, that this is about women's rights. This is about our wombs. You support that, so please support HB 955.
Mahalo. Thank you so much. And Nicolle, please share with us your insights coming in from Navajo Nation and what's going on and the work that you're doing in the US and around the world.
Great. So I'm calling in all the global partners, ICM, ACNM, ACOG, NACM, all of our global partners to come and support HB 955. And basically we talk about front lines, right? We fight for water, we fight for our land, we fight against oil companies. We need all of our people to fight with us to get this bill passed to support our traditionally trained midwives here. This is the front lines, this is why we're here.
Mahalo. And let's see if we can make that I'm Just a Bill on Capitol Hill Schoolhouse Rock video an actuality. But we know, of course, when this bill is adopted, will be another one that we all have to work for, and we'll make sure that we guarantee women's rights for all in whatever legislative body, in whatever UN mechanism. And we thank you all for the work that you do on a daily basis to make sure that everyone has rights. Mahalo.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.